All right, we're back for part two, and obviously there's no way that we can talk completely about ethics in two 15-minute videos or so. There's just so much involved in that, and there is a great book, and I'm not sure if you've received that this year or not, if it's part of your books to purchase. I know last year it was. Sorry, I should have had this out beforehand, but this is a great book, and many of my notes that I'm giving you today is from this book, Integrity, Principles of Christian Ethics by Richard Davis, and that comes from Headquarters, and is a really, really good, easy read. And it'll give you more in-depth information about ethics. And I really encourage you to get it and to read it and to apply it to your life. Okay, so let's continue on here. We were talking a little bit about business practices. Clearly, God has great disdain for those who take advantage of others to their own selfish and lustful benefits. Right? If we take advantage of widows, if we take advantage of a person in our church that has a business because, we want a good deal, or we think that they should give us a good deal, I think we really need to be very careful in that sense. And I'm getting maybe a little ahead of myself here, but we shouldn't just expect, if we have a plumber in our church, that he should just come and do work in our house for free, or give us a rate cut. You know what? He has to live. He has to pay for things. Now, if he chooses to do it for free, or if he chooses to cut us a rate or something like that, then that's fine. But we really need to be very careful about that. And personally, I believe that our work that we do in the church, that most people do in the church, needs to be on a volunteer basis, and people need to know that before they begin to do that work, if they're an electrician or a painter, or come to an agreement of how much that person's going to receive to do that, especially if it's a lot of work or big work. We shouldn't necessarily expect them to just do it for free, but we need to set those guidelines out right away so there's no miscommunication. I really strongly, most of the time when we have work to do at the church, we get an outside person to do it. Great chance to meet them, develop a relationship with them, and be a witness to them. But make sure you pay your bill on time, treat them right when they're working for you. But it can save a lot of hassle. We should go the extra mile, going out of our way to ensure our business dealings are fair, just, and honest. That is integrity in God's view. If you got a car salesman in your church, again, right, go to him not because you think you can get a deal, but because you believe he'll be honest with you and won't try to oversell you or sell you things that you don't need. That's why we should deal with Christian businesses, not necessarily because we think they should give us things that cost or not charge us extra. That's a wrong view, in my opinion, to have. We have to be careful, and in this day and age, it's amazing how many times we have to watch people work because they're dishonest, because they have shortcuts or do shortcuts to make a little extra money. We have to be really, really careful. And we obviously, as I've said, need to be careful in dealing with other Christians who own businesses. One of the other areas where we really need to be ethical in, and I think we don't touch on it enough in our churches, is the idea of tipping for restaurant service or whatever service it may be in tipping. I strongly believe that if you cannot afford to tip, or you do not plan to tip, you should not eat out. You should not. There's no worse witness than a person who doesn't tip when they're out, and we need to teach that to our people. Consider the impression and testimony you leave behind when you don't tip. We've all Probably I've heard stories of waitresses, waiters that have talked about church groups. And some of them say we just cringe when the church group comes in because we know, they're going to give us 5% or 10% or nothing. And even if it's bad service, we still need to give something. And it doesn't mean we can't complain. We need to do it rightly, but we need to do it with a right spirit. And maybe we give them a little less because of their service, but we still need to make sure that we're a witness. It's very embarrassing to be out with a Christian group who mercifully berates and agonizes a server over the food service or other complaints. Again, right? How we handle, how we talk to that person. We don't know what kind of day they've had. We don't know what they've faced. We don't know, they're working a double shift or they're not feeling well. It's not necessarily an excuse for their behavior, but as Christians, should we not show them compassion and mercy more so than the world does? And so we need to be careful there. The fair, ethical, and honest thing to do is to exercise polite and kind manners, be courteous in every transaction, and be considerate of the servers and other patrons within the establishments. Again, we can voice our dissatisfaction maybe with the service or the product, but we need to do it with the right attitude and a right spirit. If we have to become nasty and yell and shout, to get our way or to get a refund or avoid paying extra, we've lost our witness, right? We've lost our witness. A story I remember from years ago, a pastor was building a church, and they were building in the wintertime, and they had the outside structure built, but they were working on the inside, and so they were using a really big natural gas operated heater to keep the place somewhat warm while people were working on the inside. And of course, this heater used a lot of natural gas. And so when the first bill came in, it was, of course, thousands of dollars. And so the pastor called the natural gas company and was nasty, was not nice. Did basically everything they could do to get that bill lowered, to cut down or whatever. And they were did not act in a very Christian way. And they did get the bill lowered. The company took off thousands of dollars off that bill. But a saint of God from that church worked at this company, and the other workers at the company were call center people that began to talk. Of course, they talked about the calls that they got, and so they were on a break or in a lunchroom or whatever before shift, whatever it was, and this person who took the call related this situation to the people in that place of business, and it was an unfavorable description of what was taking place, and that business was located in that city. And so that pastor, in my opinion, really hurt himself over a few $1,000s, which I know that's a lot of money, but at the same time it's not worth losing our integrity or our ethics or losing our witness to other people. And so we need to be really, really careful. We also need to have integrity in our relationships. It's commonly known as the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Of course, that comes from the Bible. The world has it twisted around a little bit and how they use it, or they call it the golden rule. But the Bible also says, and as ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. But love your enemies, and do good, and lend, hoping for nothing again, and your reward shall be great, and ye shall be the children of the highest. For he is kind unto the unthankful and to the evil. A fundamental biblical principle reveals we reap what we sow. We talked about that a little bit in the last video. And people will treat us in general as we treat them. And so how we treat people ultimately will be how other people treat us. How we conduct ourselves in unfair circumstances. If you haven't learned already, life can be unfair. Even for a Christian, life can be unfair. And how we conduct ourselves in those unfair circumstances is so, so important in our testimony and witness to other people. And so let's just quickly talk about a couple of those people. Of course, Job is probably one of the greatest witnesses for us, or examples for us. Consider Job, who went through a season of great trial. John Piper, in his commentary, Job, the Revelation of God in Suffering, says Job had been lying in unrelieved misery for months with open sores all over his body. During this time he bore the grief of 7 dead sons and 3 dead daughters. All of his wealth had vanished in one afternoon. He had become repulsive to his wife, loathsome to his brothers, and even little children despised him as he lay on the ash heap outside of town. And Job did nothing wrong, right? He eschewed evil, and he was perfect and upright before God, and yet look at what he faced. But he refused to succumb to his base fleshly nature. Job 27, verse 1, moreover Job continued his parable and said, as God liveth, who hath taken away my judgment, and the Almighty, who hath vexed my soul, all the while my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils. My lips shall not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. God forbid that I should justify you. Till I die, I will not remove mine integrity from me. My righteousness I hold fast, and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me as long as I live. Time will reveal the strength of our character and the substance of our integrity, right? It's in those storms of life, it's in those unfair circumstances in our life that God tests our integrity. God tests our ethics. When everything's hunky-dory and great in our life, I can't believe I said hunky-dory. That really ages me. We're not tested, right? We're not tested in our integrity and our ethics, but it's in those unfair circumstances that our character really shines through. We need to look at Jacob as another example, right? When Jacob experienced deceit at the hands of his uncle Laban, obviously we cannot feel too sorry for him, considering the deceit that he did on his father and on Esau to get his birthright and to get the blessing from his father. Jacob agreed to work for Laban for 7 years in exchange for receiving Laban's daughter Rachel. Laban gives him his daughter Leah instead, and he has to work another 7 years for Rachel's hand. But again, right, we reap what we sow, and we see that taking place in Jacob's life. And fortunately, he turns his life around after an encounter with God, but we see, the situation coming about around him. And Joseph is another great example. Joseph was one who demonstrated great restraint and personal integrity in his life. He suffered greatly because of the actions of his jealous brothers who sold him into Egyptian slavery. Potiphar's wife tried to have sexual relationships with him and falsely accused him of him trying to make advancements on her. But Joseph, even though he went to prison, was still ethical, was still honest, right? Still showed great integrity during that time. He lost his freedom, but he maintained his character and integrity before God. And ultimately, the Lord took him to a place in being in second in command in all of Egypt during that time, because he did not allow those unfair circumstances to hinder him. David, consider the integrity David exhibited when he was running to escape the hand of King Saul. And David made a lot of bad mistakes in his life. But in this example, he really showed through in his integrity. David refused to lay a hand on the king. He did, however, quietly use his sword to cut a corner from the king's garment. Even that action caused David to feel remorse and guilt. And so, in our relationships, in unfair circumstances, and also in our lifestyle, integrity needs to be a part of that. Integrity and honesty are the character foundations of a Christian lifestyle. Paul testified of his sincere efforts to live with integrity. 2 Corinthians 4, 1 and 2. Therefore, seeing we have this ministry, as we have received mercy, we faint not, but have renounced the hidden things of dishonesty, not walking in craftiness, nor handling the word of God deceitfully, but by manifestation of the truth, commending ourselves to every man's conscience in the sight of God. And 2 Corinthians 7 and 2, receive us, we have wronged no man, we have corrupted no man, we have defrauded no man. And I need to close this here very quickly here, but let me just give you a couple of other things here. Those who desire blessing in their lives are to live with integrity. And here's a quick list. A person with integrity, with ethics, they will be honest, they will be fair, refuse to profit through fraud, avoid bribes, refuse to listen to evil plots, and close their eyes to all enticement to sin. And then we see that here taken from Isaiah chapter 33, verses 15 and 16. And the Old Testament reveals the way of integrity. Psalm 24, 3 through 5 points out the necessity of having clean hands and a pure heart, and avoiding vanity and deceitfulness. Proverbs 11, 3 through 6 points towards integrity as being the guide for those who are upright, and reveals the destiny of destruction set forth for those who are wicked. Proverbs 19 and 1 reveals it would be better to be poor and live with integrity than to speak perverseness and be a fool. And Proverbs 28 and 6 further points out it's better to be poor and live with uprightness of character than to be rich materially but be evil in one's ways. And finally, ethics is not complicated. It's a matter of doing what one knows to be right, pure, and honest. At the root of ethical behavior is a lifestyle of integrity. The word sincerity in the Old Testament is translated from the Hebrew word tamim, T-A-M-I-M, which means complete, sound, whole, wholesome, having integrity, entirely in accord with truth and facts. And I close with this quick little story. According to ancient folklore, some merchants used wax to fill in and cover defects in pottery. On hot days, the wax supposedly would melt, revealing the imperfect condition of the vase and disappointing the owner. This folklore indicated that quality, perfect products were labeled with the term sincera, which meant without wax, to indicate the guaranteed quality of the product. We should always seek to be honest, forthright, and holy in all of our ways and conduct, and make sure our heart is sincere, without wax, right? Trying to hide the imperfections in our life. So that's just a quick overview of ethics. And of course, as ministers, we need to be ethical. We need to be ethical with one another, and how we deal with other churches and other saints and other ministers, and how we live your life. So God bless you today. Hopefully you've gleaned a little bit from these short videos to help you. And again, get some books on it, read up on it, pray, allow God's Spirit to lead and to guide you in every situation that you are in.